All right, this is video 2. We're still in the notes packet, but I'm just going to touch briefly on this screen and then move on. Up here, I wanted to note it says find all missing sides and angles. Another way of saying it might just be solve the triangle. If you see that, it's just asking you to find all 3 sides lengths and all 3 angles. With that said, what I'm going to do here is, again, just very briefly, so what I would recommend you do, obviously first easiest thing to do, find that 3rd side length. When you do that, you know, a squared is 11, 8, b squared is 11, and then c being the hypotenuse, you can just simply take Pythagorean's theorem and solve. The work is shown here if you needed to pause the video and look to see how we got it. One thing I do want to note, the final answer here is just simply written as the square root of 185. And I wanted to say that is a perfectly acceptable answer. In fact, not only is it an acceptable answer, I guess I would call that a preferred answer to the rounded version, 13.6, whatever it is. So that's one note, is when you're starting working with square root answers and square root numbers on these triangles, I highly encourage, and basically just short of requiring, that you leave everything in square root notations when you write them down, when you box in answers. Sure, if you ever wanted to or needed to, you could round them and write the rounded answers, but there's no reason that you can't just leave them as square roots. Other thing I'll note here is when you find the angles. If you're starting out here, I would start by finding angle A. And in finding angle A, it really wouldn't matter A or B, but what I would say about finding it is that I would use the specific trig function of tangent. While we all have all 3 sides, again, it's not as easy to work with a square root of 185 as it is to use the tangent function and use the fraction 8/11ths, or if you're finding B 11/8. So, and again, that's noted here. That was the reason we chose that. So the larger, bigger picture recommendation is that when you're given an option of, well, I can use these 2 sides or these 2 sides, whatever it is, anytime you're given an option to use exact values or whole numbers, do it. Just because you can use a rounded answer because it's there, please try and use whole number answers in your further calculations as opposed to rounded, because then you're taking a rounded answer and you're going to get an even more rounded answer at the end. So those are my 2 things about that. The angle of depression, angle of elevation, all I wanted to say about that is the idea is from your line of eyesight here, this little black dot here, imagine that's your eye looking horizontal. Now, if you're up in a tower, up in an airplane, and you had to look down at something like the airport, the angle from horizontal down to your, whatever you're looking at, that is the angle of depression. At the same time, if you were down at the ground looking at the top of a tower, or down at the ground and you were looking up at an airplane, that angle upwards is called an angle of elevation. So, in essence, they're the same thing. They're drawn differently, but as you can see here, is referring to the alternate interior angles. And that's exactly what angle of depression and angle of elevation are. So they are the same number, they're just drawn differently. So we are going to move on. Next video, I'm just going to keep this one short. I wanted to move on in the next video to the word problems of trig functions.